but the sleeping giant of the poor class, because he has not had the weight of a black or a brown caste, continues to sleep. The black and the brown caste are waking up, challenging the nation to get well. But the sleeping giant, the most exploited of the poor class, are the poor white. For while the black and the brown are declaring that we want steak and gravy because we are malnourished, while we're declaring that we want education because we declare ourselves ignorant, know that we offset our ignorance through the acquisition of information. The poor white, because they have been exploited by the white politician, exploited by the white educator, exploited by the white preacher, exploited by the white businessman. In the face of malnutrition, the poor white asks for Jim Crow. And Jim Crow will not give him nutrition. Jim Crow will not give him information. Jim Crow will not have him represented when the real decisions of this nation are made. There is experience now in America what some historians may call a civilizational crisis. On the surface, it is black-white. Some trying to maneuver it to make it black-brown, but it's deeper than that. There's a gap growing between the haves and the have-nots. That's one evidence of that crisis. The rich are getting richer, and the poor are getting poorer. That's a split in this society. We look at the gap between labor and business. There's another split in this society. The gap between white and black is growing, not diminishing. There's another split in this society. The rebellion and the conflict now between the sexes. There's another split in this society. The gap between the hawks and the doves. There's another split in this society. What am I saying? When you add up all of these splits together, you're not just talking about a black-white crisis or black-brown crisis. You're talking about the gamut of American life. That constitutes a civilizational crisis. The only reason I would agree to come to a convention such as this with a predominantly white audience, one is that you purport to be educated in as much as you are educators. And it assumes that the process of rational thought will prevail. It's a basic assumption. It assumes that you are students of history at a level where, in a nation that is dominated by ignorance, poverty, and disease, and inasmuch as education is supposed to be the antidote to ignorance, that those of you who are here in the midst of this crisis would constitute the vanguard, or would represent the microcosm of what America ought to be like. That ignorant people must look to to educated people for direction. That a lost nation must look to its philosophers for wisdom. And it is in the context of that presupposition that I come challenging you to be consistent with your credentials on your walls. Seems to me that an uneducated white person should be able to get away with racism because he sees a lot of evidence of it. But it seems to me that once he takes one course in biology, if he passes that course, he should be in conflict with making decisions on race. If he passes one course in biology, not advanced biology, just one course, if he's educated, see, some people in my class, because we didn't have no lab, they settled for being Negroid, Caucasoid, Mongoloid. I decided I want to be a Homo sapien. Just be a part of the whole human race. Now, then I began to study my theology. And I found out that at the level of being born, at the level of motherhood, they call it Mother Nature, that there's democracy in birth. All of us come through the same process. And no matter what you acquire or what you don't acquire, that we die. There's democracy in death. They call that father time, call that fatherhood. So in motherhood and fatherhood, there's democracy because they know white folk making no decisions on birth and death. But at the level where we do make some decisions in the gap of motherhood and fatherhood, it's brotherhood, and it's all in conflict. Because the big ones want to eat up the little ones, and the white ones want to destroy the black ones, and want to force them to fight the brown ones, but oh no. We don't work out them kinks at brotherhood. Father Time will call all of us in much earlier. Because we would have abused the privilege to live together as civilized Homo sapiens. Educators, don't vacillate on what's happening in Florida. Issue ain't busing, it's us. Issue ain't the bus, it's us. We got to decide. We are in a civilizational crisis. I will have to be honest and admit, if there were a way to save black people without being involved in those of you who created this problem, I would suggest that we leave. But my better judgment and my study of geography and history will not allow me to be that irrational and narrow. There ain't no hiding place. And that's why we ain't going nowhere. The evidence of Mr. Nixon's having been to China will not be the buffalo. It would be the Peking Hilton, Coca-Cola made in Peking, Rose by Caterpillar, services by Ford. This is a new world, and I would hate for us. See, the great problem with Brother Booker T. Washington was Brother Booker was on the case for a while, you see, because he was saying that what we need to do is develop our hands and do the skills. So what he stopped at was, y'all to follow, the man wasn't being dishonest. He said we need to learn to be tradesmen. But he didn't take into account the Industrial Revolution. In other words, he was making demands out of historical context. So we end up when they give us a school where they allow us to speak Spanish and English, and then they give us free speech, which means we can cuss in Spanish and English. Come to the schools and wear our own hats in the building and have our own self-special colors and just be walking around the school just full of culture and growth. Taken from the black experience, we can go to any school in America. We can't pay the tuition. We can move in any neighborhood in America. We can't pay the note. We can buy in a car in America. We'll get it repossessed because we do not have money. Now in 1972, the issue is economic.